Hi, and welcome to this edition of the Insurance Experts. It's my pleasure to have on the line Bill Ulivieri. He's actually an investment expert, and he's actually really interested in offering long-term care solutions to his clients. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate being here.
Okay, so first of all, I got to learn about this. What's your background on the investment side, first of all? And then how did you get into the insurance planning world?
Well, it goes back a long way, but I started as a runner at the Chicago Board of Trade in the soybean pit in 1980. But from there, I moved over to the Chicago Board Options Exchange and became a floor trader, one of those crazy guys wearing a brightly colored jacket in the trading pit. And I did that roughly from 1982 until the early 2000s. And so I've always been very obsessively independent and competitive in terms of the way I view strategies and investment ideas. So my background really comes from having to make my own nut, so to speak, every single month by my own wits and not by, say, a commission sales business as most traditional stockbrokers' livelihood.
And I know you told me that you kind of had to always compete against the Wall Street, the big Wall Street firms. How did that color your perspective on the markets?
Well, every minute of every day, I stood in the trading pit and I had to defend myself against the really big Wall Street firms because they were on the other side of every trade. And because of that, I swore an oath that if I ever was able to leave the trading pit, that I would always act in clients' best interest. We started our firm in 2004, and by 2006, I had already received my accredited investment fiduciary designation from FI 360. And that type of relationship, that type of commitment to always acting in my client's best interest is something that was really, really important to me.
That's awesome. And I think that's what everyone wants in their advisor, right? Is someone that's looking out for them. So how did that kind of translate into the insurance world? How did you start to get involved on the insurance side?
Well, I just received my insurance designation in the fall of 2018. It was primarily driven by the experience that I've had with my own mom and my dad, who are in their mid 80s. Watching them, their expenses didn't go down during retirement. I think their expenses actually went up a little bit. So the model that we're using, that investment advisors use for our clients, is almost like an upside down pyramid now because of historically low interest rates, generational low rates, the cost of medical care, and just how long-term care can help be in an interesting facet, and at least a conversation at the bare minimum for a client who's looking to retire in the next few years or actually in retirement.
Mm-hmm. And I know you told me you had a personal experience about it. Tell us a little bit about your parents and who's taking care of them right now.
Well, it's my sister, Diana. She's a few years older than I am. She's an amazing caregiver. But I think the stress of moving from a single family home to a one-level condominium, my dad suffered a lot of anxiety and still does in some respects because of this misplaced guilt of him feeling like he was no longer a good provider. He couldn't afford to stay in his home because of the medical expenses that were, building up, taking care of my mom, who has a little bit of dementia. So I think from there, it just brought a sensitivity to my soul that I didn't have before. And then that's what helped Matt and I, a partner of mine, start the Final Third Network on Facebook. And then it's a group to talk about these kind of obstacles when you're 55 or above. How do you care for your parents? How do you do your advanced medical directives? How do you get your long-term care plan in place? So that's kind of what has raised it now from a back burner issue to a front burner rolling boil.
Right. We sometimes find that people's number one reason that they're getting long-term care insurance is because they want to maintain their dignity in their retirement years. And that's a perfect example with your dad, just feeling like he had somehow fallen short, having to sell the family home to take care of himself, even though there's nothing to be ashamed of. That's why we do this, is to try to make people avoid that type of situation.
Exactly. Well, they had an old farmhouse that was 3 stories with very steep stairs. And right before my parents moved, my mom actually was in a portable hospital bed in the front room when you first walked in the door. So you talk about dignity and privacy issues. That was something they were suffering from too, and that's also what spurred them to move on to a different location geographically.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit more. I know we're going to reach out to some of your clients, and we have a long-term care insurance specialist that we're going to be working with to help them get their plan. But what should your clients be thinking about when they're looking at this, kind of compared to their investment vehicles? Like, how does this help supplement what they're doing on the investment side?
Well, when I think about, so investment advisors generally manage assets with something called the 4% rule, which is the maximum amount of money you should be taking out of your retirement assets in order to pay for expenses. And maybe back in the 90s, we had interest rates were very high, about 8%. It was like a risk-free 8% interest rate. Well, now risk-free rates are about 1.6, 1.7%. So in order for you to fund an active community lifestyle, in order for you to fund your monthly medical expenses, you have to draw money that's not being replaced in a risk-free manner. So really, from my perspective, the reason why I'm embracing insurance is because it can create this cash flow and create money on a monthly basis to offset the expenses so that you don't have to draw down your retirement assets so fast.
Perfect. I mean, well said there. Exactly why people get long-term care. I think we're going to be reaching out to some of your clients soon. So thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you being on the show today, and we hope to have you on future episodes as well.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate your time.